Hello, everybody.
Welcome.
Welcome. This is Lisa and Devin, and we are here at Semiahmoo, and today is our Thursday seaside cooking demo here at Semiahmoo. And today, Devin is going to be cooking falafel, and which is really exciting. And so we'll start that in a minute. We'll just give everybody a second just to jump on here. Hi, Kay. How are you? Oh, I can still see. I'm having a hard time, I know, shocking, with my gimbal here. It does not want to balance today. I've not done it correctly, so I will just hold it like this, and that way it doesn't shake too much. You know, with everything else we're learning, I'm having to learn how to be a little bit more tech savvy, so I'm trying. But you know, it takes some time. All right. Great to have you guys here. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll just give you another second. Grab a glass of wine. We are drinking some Kim Crawford Sauvignon Blanc right now. This is going to pair absolutely amazing with the falafel. And anytime I can pair Kim Crawford, I will. Kim Crawford Sauvignon Blanc from Marlborough, New Zealand is my absolute favorite Sauvignon Blanc. I love Washington wines. I would say 3 of Cups out in Woodinville. His Sauvignon Blanc tastes really good. It might be one of the better of the Washington Sauv Blancs that I've tried. But normally I'm a pretty big stickler that New Zealand, Marlborough, they make the absolutely best Sauvignon Blanc in my personal opinion. And so I'm very biased. So we are gonna pair the falafel with some Sauvignon Blanc. So if you have some Sauvignon Blanc, oh, hi Kathy. Say hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom. Join in, of course.
Then you grab a glass, and Devin will get started here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for this recipe for falafel, which is an ancient Egyptian, Middle Eastern recipe, and is technically in the Middle East, and most places you go out there is fast food. It's actually one of the simpler, quicker, prepared items, very fresh, lots of fresh ingredients, very high in fiber. The last part where you fry it in a little bit of oil can actually be mitigated by oven baking it. I've actually pressed it into loaf pans, baked it, and then sliced it, which is a great option if you want to try to get rid of some of the extra fat in the recipe, because there is actually no fat or oil in the recipe itself until you fry it. And then the other options are if you have an air fryer or oven bake them, they can work out really well. They do have a tendency, if you don't do a high enough temperature, to dry out a little bit, and the idea behind it is a nice moist falafel. So we're going to get started. I have our ingredients over here. I'll walk through them with you, and really simple. All we're going to need is a food processor, as well as a frying pan to cook off the falafel very lightly. But over here, what I've done is I've taken chickpeas, and so I use dried chickpeas. You cannot use canned for this process. When I've tried to use can in restaurants and other applications, I've dried out the chickpeas first ahead of time, or I've added actually either flour or chickpea or garbanzo flour. And actually, let's address something right now. Chickpeas, garbanzo beans, same thing, same plant, same bean, same everything. So there isn't, when you're looking for things, it's a lot of times it's a geography, personal preference, Canadian American. Who says what? So
I told you, Paul, it's the same thing.
They come from the same plant. It's the same thing. But what I'm mixing up today, and it could be a little bit harder for you to find, is I'm actually using green chickpeas as well. And so I use a small amount of green chickpeas because they have a little bit lighter, kind of a creamier texture. I say that they're almost similar to a unripe or a little bit drier English pea. And so, English peas, if they're not fully ripe and super sweet, they need to be cooked a little bit, and they can have a little bit of starchiness. These still have a little starchiness. Green chickpeas are the same as regular chickpeas or garbanzo beans. They're just picked when they are fully ripe. Typically, chickpeas are picked when they're a little underripe and then dried, just like a regular legume. And so it'd be the same way as a white bean, a black bean, or anything else, dried and then reprocessed. So these, what we're dealing with is green chickpeas, 2 cups of dried chickpeas that I soaked overnight for 24 hours in at least 2 quarts of water. Again, recipe will be available online. But I soaked dried chickpeas overnight for 24 hours, 12 to 24 hours, 12 hours minimum, 24 hours is best. I add a half a teaspoon of baking soda. Baking soda is pure base, and that is being added to break down the skins as well as the beans themselves. And so overnight, this 2 cups expanded into nearly at least 3 cups.
Yeah.
And so they almost double in size, not quite completely. And so this is the beans that we're going to work with, are the ones that have been soaked overnight at 24 hours as in baking soda as well. So over here, we're going to drain off our water. And this is going to be the soaked chickpeas. And so again, take a look at the difference in size between these chickpeas and the dried product that we started with. So exact same, just soaking a little bit of for 24 hours. So here we are. We're going to start with this, the chickpeas. I also rinse the chickpeas a couple times after they've been soaked to not only just get rid of some of the, to get some of the flavor off, but I also typically soak them at room temperature. And so there might be a little funk or stank to it. Rinse that off. They're just fine. They're dried beans. I soak all beans at room temperature, when we're trying to get them ready. Plus, they're going to be cooked. So what you want is a nice fresh product. So we're going to rinse these nice and well so they're completely clean before we put them in the food processor. So the next step.
Sorry, Marianne, the recipe will be available on Facebook under Semiahmoo Resort. So this website or Facebook page that you're on right now, this is where the recipe will be. As well, I believe there's a portal on our website as well for the recipes. So previous recipes as well should be attached to our website. If you go under dining, then there should be a portal there for all the recipes.
Yeah, actually, all the recipes from the cooking show are being posted there, and so the last ones, it might take a day or 2, but they do pop up, and this one will be on there quite soon. So back to it. So we have our food processor here. Mars might be a little bit more industrial than yours, but the same idea exists. So we're going to start with our garbanzo beans. Then we have our green garbanzo beans. So this is, again, I'll post the recipes, but this is 2 cups of dried garbanzo beans that have been soaked. So they're about 3 cups now. I'm going to add a half a cup of green garbanzo beans. A full cup of chopped herbs. I like parsley and cilantro. Dill works really well. Parsley is without a doubt the best in this process. But if you wanted to use other herbs, I would say cilantro and dill are your best options. I've used basil. I've used lots from the garden and at this point, this is kind of preference, but I guarantee you 100% parsley is probably the best tasting and is the most authentic. But if you want to use anything that you enjoy, basil or dill or anything else, more than welcome to. So actually, before we add that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pulse the chickpeas real quick. It's going to be, I'm just looking to get them started to pulse so that they're not completely broken down, but I'm going to pulse them once or twice. And pulsing is just turning on and off the machine if you don't have the pulse option. Ours has the pulse option, so once I hit the button, it just moves the blade and that's it. If you don't have the pulse option, just turn on and off as quickly as you can. But here's the pulse.
It's a good time for me to grab my glass of wine and have another sip.
So what I'm just looking to do is it started a little bit. And in all honesty, it's just mixing the two together. It's not chopping them very much. It's starting the chopping process because we want to kind of run it for a little while to chop and incorporate everything. So now at this point, now the 2 chickpeas have been added and we've chopped them a little bit. Now we add the rest of our ingredients at this point, which is going to be our chopped herbs, which is about a cup of chopped herbs, a 1/3 cup of vegetables. I like to put a lot of vegetables. It doesn't necessarily call it for in the recipe, a very traditional recipe, but I've found through just at home cooking, because it's one of my favorite dishes, cooking over and over again, using stuff from the garden. I've used radishes, I've used everything that I can find that I just like, chard stems, anything else that goes in there just vegetables that were really good. So I use carrots, celery, and onion, and a couple garlic cloves. So I'd use a third cup of each, so basically equals about a cup, and then a couple cloves of garlic as well. So we're gonna put that in there.
Well, that's good to know because I planted rainbow red chard, and I planted a bunch of radishes in my garden, and I planted, what about tarragon?
Tarragon would be good.
Yeah.
It's tarragon is light, and if you use it, dry tarragon can be really good. If you bruise tarragon, similar to basil, it gets a very licoricey kind of flavor, which is great. Overly bruised and overly dark tarragon can get that kind of bitter licorice, and so that's not what you're looking for. Same thing with basil, that bitter or dark. And so you want to be careful not to chop or bruise those too much. Tarragon and basil are very delicate herbs that if you pick them too early or treat them, and a lot of people will tear them instead of cut them, but bruising will affect the flavor quite a bit. But tarragon for sure. And again, this is one of those points where you get down to kind of preference that you might like something. Say you like spicy a little bit more than other people. So I'm about ready to add two different types of, several different seasonings. One is Garam Masala, which is a Indian herb or an Indian spice mix that is kind of similar to curry, but without the turmeric and other stuff. So it has fenugreek and a wonderful flavor complex to it, but it doesn't have the yellow kind of bitterness that traditional curry does. It's an Indian Ayurvedic herb, and it means to actually heat the body. And so Garam Masala is a wonderful, actually really healthy and good for you spice mix, which are a lot of Indian spices there. When you look at the history of a lot of Indian spices, curry blends and things like that, they were actually developed through Ayurvedic means to be healthy and to produce something. And so this one is specifically for heating the body. And so if you're looking for that as a healing process or a meditation process, then using this, the Garam Masala is actually a wonderful herb. And a little bit of toasted cumin that's going in there as well. And then salt, pepper, which are basic, just to go in there to flavor things. And then, so I've got my Garam Masala and cumin just went in. Now I've got a little salt, pepper, and then the last one, which I like as fresh as possible, is going to be lemon zest. So it's one whole lemon, zest and juice. So we're going to put that right in. The fresher the better for this. That's one of the reasons why I waited. Lemon, acid, and a lot of other things break down over time, so you want it to be as fresh as possible. Heating up lemon juice as well can turn it to be bitter, and so I try to use lemon juice whenever we're cooking and sauteing procedures and other stuff. Lemon goes in at the very end because the cooking and the heat process on lemon will actually make it somewhat bitter. So
thank you, Marianne, for watching from Northern California. That's exciting. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, that's actually my mother-in-law. So.
Oh, that's your mother-in-law? Oh, hi, mother-in-law.
So here we go. A little bit of lemon juice.
Sorry, my video and skills today are, I'm trying to hold it steady.
And I'm trying to stay in screen. So here we go. We got our, everything is added to this point. So we have our herbs, our seasonings, our vegetables, our spices, and we're going to puree this, and we're going to puree it till it's again, I'm going to use pulse because part of the reason using pulse is it also doesn't heat the blade. And so if you were to just hit on, the blade will heat up, and what you'll have at the base is you'll have a peanut butter consistency. You'll have a puree, smooth, heated, and you don't want that heat. You want it to be light, you want it to be fluffy. And I'll show you how we're going to make it fluffy here in a second. So here at the end, we're just, now that we got everything added, we're going to pulse. Even though it sounds like the blade is continuously running, it's not continuously running on high. That's what we don't want. And so even if you have to go and turn it on and off and on and off to create that, that's what you want, because you don't want too much heat. We don't want to cook at this point. So we're going to keep going.
But you can really, really smell that lemon zest when you added it at the end there.
Yeah, and to me, lemon zest is fresher the better. So, and again, I use a microplane because what you want out of lemon zest is you do not want to go much past the white or into the white. And so you want the yellow. As soon as it starts turning lighter, more opaque, that's when you stop zesting.
We are making, for those of you that have joined us a little bit late, I say we because, you know, I like to take the credit, it's not me. Chef is making falafel today. And we're drinking Kim Crawford Sauvignon Blanc to pair with it, which is my absolute favorite white wine. My favorite Sauvignon Blanc is Kim Crawford. But for those of you who are diehard Washingtonians, we haven't heard that phrase enough lately, I recommend 3 of Cups. So they are kind of a small boutique winery that's located in Woodinville. And Mike Matheny he's one of the most wonderful human beings I've ever met in my life. And his Sauvignon Blanc is amazing. It has all those floral notes that I love in a Sauvignon Blanc. So it doesn't have anything bitter. It's just it's a beautiful Sauvignon Blanc. So for Washington wine, 3 of Cups Sauvignon Blanc, but otherwise I really stick to my favorite. Kim Crawford from New Zealand, Marlborough, is the best Sauvignon Blancs in my personal opinion.
All right, so here we are. Nice and pulse pureed. So the last little trick that I'm going to add to this is toasted sesame seeds, because the flavor is phenomenal, and I don't add tahini anymore, which will actually kind of thin it out and just create more of a paste. The sesame seeds in this will actually create a really nice nutty kind of flavor. And then the last little bit is baking powder. So the difference between baking soda and baking powder is baking soda is pure base. Baking powder has acid added to it. Technically a little cream of tartar, like we talked about last week, and the fact that cream of tartar, or it was last week or the week before, but the fact that cream of tartar is pure acid. And so baking powder is a balance of pure base and pure acid. Baking soda and cream of tartar. So this is a blend of baking soda and baking tartar, but baking powder. And this will, baking powder, for any of you bakers out there, it's a leavening agent. And so during the heating process, similar to shortbread or something else, baking powder only responds to heat. And so it will only create that leavening and that lightening through the quick heating process. So if you don't heat it or heat it quick enough, the baking powder will not respond. And again, I'm not incorporating it too much. I don't want it to be pureed in there, and I don't want it to be mashed up, and I definitely don't want the sesame seeds to be mashed up. So in the food processor, I'm just mixing the two together in here, gently and lightly. Now I'm going to transfer this to a bowl, and then in that bowl we'll be able to get the final kind of mixing. So. And then from there, I have oil heating up here. It's about, the goal temperature is about 325 to 375. 350 is really the best. It'll brown really nicely. Again, I've baked this before in a loaf pan. I've also, I haven't used an air fryer, but I'm sure an air fryer would work. And I've oven baked just small pieces before. And they work. It works really well, but you want to use, when you're baking, you want to use a high enough temperature that you're achieving that kind of crisp and crunch on the outside, because that's one of my favorite parts. So I'm going to transfer this to our bowl.
Can you see me? I can see you. We are making falafel.
All right, we're in our bowl. We mixed in the sesame seeds and the baking powder earlier, and we're just going to try to make sure that that's well incorporated before we start to fry here.
So this is a great, healthy vegetarian option.
Absolutely. This is kind of my wife and I's go-to healthy vegetarian option that you wouldn't even know it's healthy or vegetarian. We just really enjoy it. To serve it with a little salted tomatoes, tzatziki, pita bread, and a little tahini dressing. Phenomenal. That's
yeah.
perfect meal.
Sorry if I'm shaking the camera, my arm's getting sore.
All right, so I'll make it quick here. We are actually ready to fry. So here's our chickpea and garbanzo mix. So this is all the herbs, the vegetables, everything chopped up in here. You can see a little bit of the sesame seeds, and then we stirred in the sesame seeds and the baking powder at the very last minute. So this will allow it to kind of puff up and be a little bit lighter and a little bit more crumbly on the inside instead of being paste and thick.
So then this is gluten-free as well?
Yes, gluten-free, yeah. Garbanzo beans are gluten-free. We have not added any flour or anything else. And so I like to make nice little patties.
Is this a good angle here?
And then we go. It's a little crumbly and a little moist, but that's what you want. You want a little bit of moisture, a little bit of crumbliness, and they're gonna, the outside will fry up really nicely, and you want enough heat when you're frying that they that they stick together. If you do too low of a temperature, they'll fall apart. If you do too high of a temperature, they'll burn right away. And so it really is kind of a tricky balance to get that. And while I've done them in deep fryers quite a lot in restaurant and professional applications, typically the best application is a low fry, which means that the fryer oil comes up to about half the elevation of the side. So you really only want, an inch or two. But think about when you're frying.
What kind of oil did you use, Chef?
I'm using a canola oil blend, which has a little bit of olive oil in it because I'm going with a lower temperature. If we're in our fryers or something else, then I either use pure canola. I try to use a non-GMO canola if possible, and then same thing, kind of steer away from soy because of allergies and other things. So here we are. We have our chickpeas or our chickpea falafel fritters in the fryer. So we're going to let this kind of brown real quick.
So you can see the oil is only coming up to about half of the side of the falafel.
And I wanted to test and see. So typically what I do a lot of times is I start with just one piece first, especially if I'm doing a low fry like this to make sure the temperature's right. So this is the one that we started with here by the handle. And we're going to flip this gently.
Well, look at the color on that.
I'm going to start with the next one here. It's pretty good. These went a little bit later, so I'm just going to check them. Make sure they're free. There we go. One more minute and we'll flip the last one. And there we go. So again, the ideal temperature is anywhere from 325 to 375, which is typical deep frying temperature. But again, when you do a low fry like this, you still need enough of that heat to be able to get the crispy texture on the outside before it falls apart. I've used olive oil, but you have to be very careful with olive oil because even though it's a better fat and much healthier for you, the problem is that when you heat up olive oil, you start to denature it, you start to change it, becomes saturated fat instead of unsaturated fat. And honestly, once you heat oils, they're no longer as good for you. And so sometimes I'll use olive oil, but I'll use a much smaller amount, and I'll also try to keep the heat lower if that's possible. Say I was going to bake this recipe, then I'd probably add a couple tablespoons of olive oil to the recipe and then bake it in a loaf pan or something. And then I've actually taken it from that loaf pan, sliced it, and gone on sandwiches and other things.
That's a great way to do that.
It's actually a great way to make it in batch and in bulk. And so
or for big families like mine.
Yeah, and so a really great friend of mine that in California that used to make it all the time, Andre, he used to make it in a loaf pan, and then he would slice it, and then we would pan sear it real quick. That's what we'd have for dinner. And then the next several days, we were slicing that stuff and we were putting on sandwiches. It was phenomenal.
Nice.
So, yeah. So here we are. We have our falafel here finished.
a question. Oz is wanting to know, when can we see you make pizza?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, maybe next week. I'm always looking for suggestions. So I think pizza is a phenomenal suggestion. We use fantastic ingredients here. It'll help us
Carn Springs.
Carn Springs, local cheeses, Ferndale Farmstead cheese, great high quality San Marzano tomatoes, everything. So yeah, absolutely. I think next week maybe we'll do pizza. Thank you for the suggestion.
Thank you for that suggestion. I love that because somebody else asked who gets to eat it. I do. And then he takes the rest home for himself and his lovely wife.
Yes, this is our dinner for tonight. So
I only get one.
This is a recipe that my wife and I have been working on for a long time. We both love it. We both love playing with it. And, we've made it 100 different ways. I started working with this recipe as ratios. I started working with, I wanted it green because the best falafel I ever had was at Mamoon's Falafel off of Washington Square in New York City. And it blew me away. It was $1.50 and it was the best piece of falafel I've ever had. It was so good and it was bright green. How do I get that color? So I started adding herbs and I started adding different vegetables and things like that. And then I found out about green garbanzo beans. And so I started adding all these other things to it that kind of brought it similar. And I've gotten to a point that I don't necessarily remember what Mamoon's was like, but what I have, I crave. So I think I got to that point. So here we are.
But you make I crave too, so I think
So
we're all in the same boat.
Here are our little falafel nuggets, and again on the inside what we're looking for is a nice green color. You can see the pieces and you can see the texture. What you don't want is you don't want a paste or a puree. This isn't hummus. Hummus is a different story. Maybe one of these days I'll make hummus for you, and actually hummus, the way that I make hummus, hummus is far more difficult than this actually. It might be a simple spread, but to remove those skins is very difficult. This is one of my favorites. This is something that, hey, you want to have falafel for dinner tonight? We soak beans ahead of time. We keep them in the fridge, and they're good for probably a week if you change the water in the fridge. And so other than soaking the beans ahead of time, you can say, hey, let's have falafel tonight. It takes very little time to put together. So there you go.
How long would you soak? How long, if you kept your garbanzo beans in the water in the fridge, how often would you change that water?
So 24 hours. Change the water at least every 12 to 6 hours if you can. After that, drain the water off. Leave them hydrated in the fridge, just like that, and probably 4 to 5 days of garbanzos like that in the refrigerator, untouched. If they start to get a little kind of flavor or a little stank or a little smell to them, rinse them off. They shouldn't be bad. They're a pretty healthy product. The only thing that I would worry about is, like anything that comes from the ground, there is the potentiality for botulism. So what you want to make sure is that you're cooking it all the way through. And so as long as you cook it all the way through, it kills off those bacteria, or you're not concerned with it. But for the most part, you want to handle anything that comes from the ground with the great care for botulism. But and also botulism grows over time. So if you let this sit in your fridge for a month, issue. A week, you're going to be okay. If after a week and you smell it and it does not smell good and does not smell like something you want to eat, do not eat it. That's as simple as it can be. If it does not seem like something, can I get away with it? Can I get away with it? That's up to you. Can your digestion get away with it?
Yeah.
I opt for no. Let's not play with this. I'm not going to make my friends and family sick with this.
No.
So in restaurants and other things, we do not take chances.
No.
We make sure that everything is the height, and we have a protocol in line that say after 3 days this product is no good.
Yeah.
And so at home, it's different in handling practices. If you handle it really well, if you refrigerate really well, then it can last a little bit longer.
Yeah,
So.
and I think that that's just a really good point that I just want to piggyback on just for a second while I have your attention, is that restaurants, we have been so trained to make sure that your health and safety is number one. So I know there's a lot of people out there that feel really afraid to go back to a restaurant. I mean, I guess it depends on what area, what restaurant it is, but I would say for the most part, hey, chef, that we have been trained to wash your hands, to keep your products safe and clean. Our equipment is cleaned. We follow the highest standards. And so even today I was on a call with Washington Hospitality Association and the health board. And the health board was saying, look, us restaurants people, we know how to be clean, and we really, really do. So we just want to assure you, I just wanted to take that moment to just really assure you.
We take our jobs very seriously.
Very seriously.
Each one of us has a food handler's card that is distributed by the state health department, locally as well. It's a state exam. All of these things require us to know proper food handling, how to handle illnesses and outbreaks. We're updating all of that with the COVID regulations, but I gotta say that, you know, COVID and other things are a bit of an issue. You know, hepatitis, those other things, we have all that in line because they've always been issues. Salmonella, botulism, those are bigger foodborne illnesses that last through what kills COVID. And so we are doing absolutely our best to maintain a higher level than we ever have. And with that higher level, we are taking care of food better than we ever have. And we are redoing a lot of our programs in this kitchen to be cleaner, more organized right from the very beginning. And another big one for this time is traceability. We're going to have traceability that you can find when and where our product came from, who handled it, how it was handled, and you know, eventually when guests are brought back in and we have service, we will be recording and tracking all of that as well, so that we can report to the health department and other things.
Yeah, your safety and our team safety is our utmost priority. So just know that. So somebody's asking when we're opening. We will announce that very soon. Hopefully it's soon. We are working towards a target date. Hopefully that doesn't change. We've had a couple of dates and we've had to change them based on our governor's instructions, but we are hoping to be open very soon, and we hope that next week we can announce that and let you know when we're open. And we can't wait to have you come and enjoy our food and the beautiful scenery. We have 80 acres here. We have tons of space for you. We cannot wait to have you back.
Social distancing is not an issue here. We have plenty of space.
We have so much space. So thank you so much again for watching today. The recipe will be posted. I'll take a couple of pictures. I will post those up with the recipe. Thank you again. Please feel free to share. And thanks again for watching, and take care of yourselves. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.